He's 63. He doesn't spend 3 hours a day at the gym. He's not on some trendy diet. He doesn't dress like he's 25. But when he walks into a room, women turn their heads. Not because he's classically handsome, but because there's something in him now that wasn't there when he was 30. Something that almost never shows up in younger men. This isn't luck. It's not an accident. And it's definitely not about money, even though a lot of people assume that's the answer. There's a specific reason why some men become more attractive after 60 than they've ever been in their entire lives. And today, we're going to break it down, piece by piece. Stick around till the end, because the final secret in this video explains everything else. And most men have never even thought about it. If you're in your 50s or 60s yourself, you've probably noticed this, either in your own life or in the men around you. Some men fade with age. Others get more interesting, calmer, more magnetic. The difference isn't genetics. It isn't luck. It comes down to specific shifts that happen inside a man, if he lets himself go through them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what makes a man over 60 so attractive that age stops even being part of the equation. And trust me, the seventh point will surprise even the people who think they already know everything about this. At 30, a man is proving his career. At 40, his status. At 50, that he's still got it. Then, at some point, and for a lot of men this happens closer to 60, he just stops. Simply stops. He stops trying to impress his boss, stops trying to look younger than he is, stops competing with younger guys for attention in the room. And here's what happens next. People around him feel it, and it feels like a massive relief. Because next to someone who isn't proving anything, you don't have to prove anything either. You can just be yourself. This is the first, and maybe the most basic, reason for the pull people feel toward him. But the real magic is still ahead. Notice the difference between a younger man and a mature one in conversation. A younger man talks a lot, fast, sometimes loud, trying to get noticed. A man over 60 who's lived a full life talks less, but every word seems to carry more weight. Here's an example. Everyone at the table is arguing, talking over each other. He stays quiet, and when he finally speaks, the room goes still. It's not because he's smarter than everyone else. It's because, over decades, he learned not to waste words. And here's the paradox most people miss. The less someone talks, the more closely people listen. Women are especially tuned into this. A calm, quiet confidence is more convincing than any well-rehearsed line ever could be. But something even more interesting is coming, because this quiet voice connects directly to the secret we'll unpack at the very end. In his younger years, the fear of rejection controlled almost every decision a man made. He was afraid to approach someone, afraid to speak the truth, afraid of not being good enough. By 60, a lot has shifted. This man has already survived rejection, already survived loss, already survived setbacks that once felt impossible to come back from. And here's what happens. Rejection loses its grip on him. He can walk up to a woman and simply say, "It would be nice to talk with you." No shaking in his voice, no internal panic that she might say no. Because even if she does say no, he knows he'll be fine. He's already survived far bigger things than that. That inner freedom is incredibly attractive. People can feel it when someone standing next to them is free from fear. And they're drawn to it, the way you're drawn to warmth. If this is resonating with you, go ahead and hit like and subscribe to the channel. Here we dig into the psychology of maturity and what actually makes someone attractive at any age. There's a lot more coming. A younger man is attractive because of his potential, because of who he could become. A man over 60 is attractive because of his story, because of who he's already become. That's a massive difference. Potential is a promise, and promises don't always come through. A story is proof, already lived, already happened, already real. When a man like this talks about his life, the highs, the falls, how he picked himself back up after the hard stretches, there's a depth to it that simply can't be faked at 25. And here's what happens with someone who has a rich story to tell. He's never boring to be around. Because he's not trying to seem interesting, he actually lived an interesting life. This is one of the main reasons age works in his favor here instead of against him. Here's something people rarely talk about. Most people, when they're listening to someone, are actually just waiting for a pause so they can jump in with their own thing. That's not listening. That's waiting in line. A mature man who's walked a long road listens differently, genuinely. He asks a question and actually wants to hear the answer. He looks at your eyes, not at his phone. He doesn't cut you off mid-sentence. Here's an example. A woman is talking about a rough day. An immature listener jumps straight into advice, tries to fix it, tries to solve it on the spot. A mature man simply says, "That sounds like it was hard," and keeps listening. It sounds simple, but it's an incredibly rare quality. And it's exactly what makes people feel truly seen. Being genuinely seen is one of the most powerful forms of attraction that exists. Hold on to that thought. It ties directly into what we're about to reveal at the very end. Here's an important distinction people often miss. A man who takes care of himself at 60 just to look younger or to be liked gives off a certain kind of anxiety, and people can feel it. A man who takes care of himself because he respects his body, his energy, his life, gives off something completely different. A calm, grounded self-respect. The difference is subtle, but it's enormous. The first one is basically saying, "Please notice me." The second one says nothing at all. He simply lives as if his life matters, and that's exactly why it comes across as mattering to everyone around him. He goes for morning walks, not because he has to. He eats real, decent meals, not to check a box. He looks put together, not for other people's approval, but because he respects what he sees in the mirror. And that's a quiet but incredibly powerful form of attraction. Because self-respect is always contagious. Here it is. The secret that explains everything else. In his younger years, a lot of men look for a partner to fill some kind of emptiness, to feel like enough, to have someone else confirm their worth. That need is invisible on the surface, but other people can feel it, as a subtle desperation, a subtle neediness. And, ironically, that's exactly what pushes people away. A man over 60 who's lived through enough of life often arrives at a completely different place. He's already whole on his own. He doesn't need anyone else to feel complete, and that's when everything shifts. He's not searching for love out of need. He's willing to share his life out of abundance. Those are two completely different energies, and people feel the difference instantly, even without understanding why. This state, a calm wholeness that a man lives from, instead of chasing something to rescue him, is the real reason why men over 60 sometimes become more attractive than they ever were at 30. Not because they changed on the outside, but because they stopped needing anyone else's gaze to feel real. And once that shift happens, all 6 habits we talked about earlier come together into one single thing. The quiet voice, the freedom from fear of rejection, the rich story, the ability to truly listen, the self-respect. All of it is simply the outward expression of one inner state: wholeness. Let's bring this all together. A man becomes more attractive after 60, not despite his age, but because of what that age did to him, if he let himself go through it. He's stopped proving himself to anyone. He speaks less, but his words carry weight. He's no longer afraid of rejection. He lives from his story, not just from his plans. He's learned how to truly listen. He takes care of himself out of respect, not anxiety. And most importantly, he's no longer looking for love to feel whole. He already is. That wholeness is the real secret to attraction we've been talking about since the very beginning of this video. If this video resonated with you, drop a comment and tell me which of these 7 points felt the most true for you personally. And subscribe to the channel if you want to keep learning about the psychology of maturity, attraction, and real strength in men. Thanks for watching all the way through. I'll see you in the next one.